Our Father, we thank Thee for the privilege of being alive this day and for being gathered in a place of promise and a place of hope, a place of peace, and for all that the future portends as we are joined together as one people. We pray that Thou open our ears to hear and to truly hear the best that others have to say, and that we would be willing to share the best that we know, and that in this spirit of sharing there could be the fruit of greater things. We pray that doors will open that now seem closed, resources will be unlocked that seemed unattainable, and that the dreams and hopes of our people would be realized. We pray that faith would not die in our own heart, and that the love of fellow man would burn eternally within our own experience. We thank Thee for those who have come from afar. Bless the efforts. We thank Thee for those in authority who have the responsibility to lead. And we pray that there be a special anointing upon our leaders, that it would not be of self, but it would be a selfless service for the greater good. And that we would be minded not only for the here and now, but for generations to come. That what we would do would be to lasting good. And we thank Thee for the opportunity that this hour presents, that we could consider the lessons of the past, that we could be inspired by the best that others have achieved even in our own day, and that being so inspired we could create what is specially relevant to this place and this time. Wilt Thou hear us in these askings and grant us Thy favor as we are gathered, Thy blessing as we would part, we ask in Jesus' name.
Welcome to all. That prayer was so profound. I'm glad it's recorded. It said a lot. Starts us off on the right note. I was warned by Mr. Raja Kadri, our economist who leads on this project, Economic Growth Strategy, along with the McDonald team, that this is not a time for speeches. I must be brief. This is a time for the people to make their comment. And he made sure I didn't have enough time to put together a speech, because just after we met this afternoon, I had to rush home and just get enough time to get back here. But I want to just put in a few words. For those who remember, at the conclusion of my budget speech in June, I said that it was time for the people of Montserrat to grow. Time to let the people of Montserrat grow is what I said. Grow out of dependency on aid. I also said that the people of Montserrat hate to be a welfare state. Nobody likes to be a welfare state. And I think that's why everyone is here tonight. You all agree with me. You want to see Montserrat grow out of dependency. To grow out of dependency, we need to have a plan. A plan and a strategy. One that is practical. One that, how do I put it, is realistic, visionary at the same time, but one that is definitely Montserratian, tailored for Montserrat, not a copy twisted of anywhere else, for Montserrat and for its people. I guess what you would say is must be a plan and a strategy that is of the people, by the people, for the people. And I think this exercise in consulting the public reflects that very seriously. Raj, Mr. Kadri, I call him Raj, and the McDonald team were asked a few weeks ago to come back. I insisted that they would come back to Montserrat after having been here before, consulting various sectors, various groups, youth, you name it, everyone, to come back and have this public meeting, to go back on the radio and speak to the public, to take the time to come back to cabinet again and go through the document being drafted. And they've come, and I'm pleased. Just about 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of meeting former President Clinton. And he said that the devastation to the two territories, or the territories in the region by the recent storms, was a God-given opportunity for the United Nations and those who could afford it to use the Caribbean region, those affected, as an experiment, as a laboratory for demonstrating what resiliency to climate change could be. And he said, for creating a diverse economy that could withstand the shocks, the social, economic, and environmental shocks. When I listened to him, I said, you know what? We may not have suffered the devastation as the others. We may be 20 years late on many things, but it's never too late for us to, as the prayer said, have faith and hope that we can indeed, as a people, not put together a plan, not just put together a strategy, but execute it, implement it, and make sure that it will create jobs, create more homes, attract our people back. I always say that Montserrat, or the volcano, our greatest enemy, once our greatest enemy, our best friend. And I say that to mean that things are actually turning around. A lot of our challenges are now presenting opportunities. Today, the team were discussing the strategy and with ministers and members, and the focus was on how unique our half-buried town was, that nobody else in the region had it, and we need to really take advantage of it. And I made one point, that was, even before we had the volcano, we had a unique country. We had a peaceful, friendly people. We had a paradise. Now, the volcano, as I said, is our friend. It's just another asset, a very key asset. But we have both the friendly, peaceful society we once had, and we have a volcano, both combined, with resilient people, with entrepreneurs in the waiting, to work together to achieve that growth out of dependency that I spoke of. As I said, I have to be careful not to get into speech, but I'm happy that we're here tonight. I want to thank Mr. Raja Kadri and the team for working hard over the past 6 months with a deadline to be met by the end of this month. The end of this month, Raja? Yes. Yes. And when Raj says yes, I know what he means. Yes, the end of the month. The time is right for everyone to give their views, to express. It's not going to end tonight. I am advised and assured that this is going to be a live document, to be reviewed and improved as we go along. I'm going to sit tonight with my pad to make notes. Today, on the flight from England, I spent 3 hours going through the document. Raj sat next to me, and I was giving my input. And it was exciting to really provide the ideas and that would contribute to what I think will be our plan, not the PDM plan, the people's plan. Please feel free to express your views, contact Raja from here forward. Mr. Kadri and the McDonald team will make themselves available as much as possible. They promised us that. And let's make this exercise a successful one. And with that, I want to say again, thanks for coming. Thanks to everyone.
Even though the document is coming from the Ministry of Finance, from the government of Montserrat, it is not our document. It belongs to all of you. When these guys were doing the consultation, it's for the record that I recused myself to be any part of those conversations. I wanted people to express their opinion, their thoughts freely, because it's important that it becomes a part of a national psyche, national narrative. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the second thing is, as Premier said, we have been through these exercises before in my own country in Canada, where people write documents and then, it goes nowhere. This one will be a sort of live engagement with the people moving forward. So what I intend to do, that as we go along, the document will be available. We'll have a continuous engagement with people who have thought, and I was really, really amazed by it, even though we didn't get many calls, but people call and they ask very intelligent, smart questions, means that people in Montserrat really do care about the country. So keeping that document alive is the goal. We'll have further plans to how we're going to continue to engage the people, not only here, but all across the world where Montserrat. Every Montserratian on this planet has a stake in this document. So with that, I will let Stephen take over with the presentation. We'll do a quick presentation, and then we'll open the forum for you guys to ask questions.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you, Premier. Thank you to everyone for coming out this evening. This is a consultation, so it doesn't work unless you turn up. It doesn't work unless you express some opinions, get involved in discussions with the consultant team, with Raja and his team as well. So my name is Paul Hammond. I'm the Global Practice Leader for Mott MacDonald's economics business. Mott MacDonald is a multinational organization working in the development and engineering sector around the globe, based in London, but with offices here in the Caribbean, North America, South America. We've got 17,000 staff. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to be back where colleagues have been in Montserrat before, working to deliver a better future for you and future communities. This evening we have our Head of Economic and Social Development, my colleague Stephen Cox, who will be giving the main presentation, which shall only be 10 minutes or so. And we also have Dr. Glyn Owen, who's one of our key economics team back in the UK. So 6 months ago, we entered into a tender competition to deliver this plan for Montserrat. Absolutely delighted that we won that competition against competitors from many other countries, apparently. Here we are this evening, moving towards a conclusion. Here we are finally with some ideas that we think we can really discuss with you in some detail. So the three of us from the team will be around at the end of the event. Sounds got better, I believe. The three of us will be around at the end of the event to enter into those discussions and take notes and take your ideas forward and amend the plan as appropriate.
So we've heard about promise and hope on Montserrat. I think you've got the hope and the faith covered. This is the promise bit that we bring, and here's the document here. It does exist, has been produced. It's under review at the moment. We've been talking about it with ministers today. We'll do some more tomorrow. It will be released by the government very, very shortly. There's a lot in it, and that's right. But it's written in a style that should be accessible, because it has to be accessible to you, to your businesses, to businesses that aren't here yet, to people that aren't even born yet. That's what this is all about. It's about the future. And we've tried to go 10 years into the future and set out what should give you a solid basis to grow and develop further beyond that. So 3 elements that we're going to touch on. We'll give you some context to our approach and what the strategy is about. We'll give you some of the outcomes that are in the plan, but there is an awful lot of actions in there. And remember, this is a plan. It's not a blueprint. It's not a how-to, but it's a could-do. And the could-do depends on getting the investment to drive those interventions. And we're quite positive that the money is out there and the plan will help secure it. So the main purpose for today is get the presentation out the way, give you some information. We'll answer as many questions as we can in an open and honest way. That's the way we operate. And then we can have one-to-one discussions with those that want it later in the time available. And then there's email, there's Skype, there's other ways to get in touch. This is a real engagement process we're involved in here. So a few outlines on the context. So, it's very clear. Before we started this commission, we didn't know Montserrat. So we turn up in places. We don't assume that we know anything. We get to know the place from the bottom up. We talk to the officials in government, we talk to businesses, we talk to stakeholders. We review the documents that are available. We mine through the data. We get a really good grasp of what the place is all about. We have to do that before we can help people move forward. It's important to articulate the current position and not to pull any punches. We have to say it like we see it, and that's the basis that we're working from. So, the population is small. The skill base has room to grow and improve. The economy is dominated by the public sector. This is the context that we're working with, but that gives space for growth, for private sector intervention. So the plan forms a basis for future economic growth and proposals to develop the economy further beyond where it is now. We're also very clear in the purpose of this. To use UK parlance, this is about rebalancing the economy. The public sector domination at the moment, to try and move it towards a more private sector-oriented economy. We have to make it sustainable as well. We know that you've received numerous consultancy reports, big ideas, things that haven't quite came to be delivered. That's not what we're about. Mott MacDonald's been in existence for 150 years. We're about helping people deliver stuff, and that stuff here is economic growth. But the key thing, and the Premier touched on it, there's no point in writing a plan that isn't achievable. That doesn't help anyone. So this is broken down into stuff that's achievable, deliverable, and practical. That's the basis on which we work. Having said that, it is also ambitious. So we see this as a jigsaw. There's no single solution. This is a package of measures that come together in a holistic way to give you a way forward for your economy. Enterprise is going to be key to this. Enterprise for people now, for people going through school at the moment, for future business owners. The visitor economy, to use a phrase from the Premier, to turn that volcano from ash to cash. It's a massive opportunity there. There's some good ideas that and by the way, all these ideas aren't ours. We've just collated the ideas from the people that we've spoke to and add on to that what we know to be worthwhile. We've also engaged with DFID, the UK's Department for International Development, so they're aware of what's in this plan. And so far, they're on board with what we've been saying. So a couple of things that I want you to understand from what we're going to say in the next few slides is this is all about interconnectivity. It's not about Project A or Project B. It's about how Project A and Project B link together. And in doing that, that's where you get greater economic benefit. So there is some theory behind this. I won't bore you with that. But we will go into some of the detail on how we see this moving forward. So there's a strategy which sets out the approach, and there's a delivery plan, and in the delivery plan are the interventions. What we realistically see here is an economy that's been growing at about 2% a year. 2% doesn't sound very much, but that's a reasonable. It's reasonable for an economy of this size. It's also on par with places like the UK. What we suggest is that with the interventions that are put forward here, and there will be others as well, that growth level can move to somewhere between 3% and 5%. So that red line, which won't be a straight line, but it shows the direction of travel. So 15 years, roughly 2% per annum. The next 10 to 15 years, ratcheting that up to 3 to 5%. So that's the economic productivity of the island increasing. So in 10 years from now, or from next year, we reasonably expect the economy to have grown by 40 to 50%. and employment to have grown to between 400 and 600 additional jobs, mostly in the private sector. Some population growth as well, incomers, diaspora returning, maybe 1%, maybe a little bit more, a little bit harder to predict that. So what we see is the public sector staying the same size, doesn't grow, doesn't need to grow. The growth is coming from the private sector, which is generating economic activity. The private sector also provides opportunity for foreign exchange and to replace some of the imports that you're buying at the moment. So all these factors contribute to economic growth, support the rebalancing that we spoke about earlier, and also, which is important for you here and important for UK government, reduces the dependency over time on DFID's investment. So in essence, we're going to go through 4 slides now, which will show you about the interconnectedness of the interventions. It's important to say that what we see now is a new approach for the next 10, 15 years. It's different than what's gone before. It's more inclusive, it's more holistic, and it takes a view of the whole economy, not individual projects. You take the visitor economy, for example. You're attracting roughly 15,000 visitors per annum, so much lower than the neighbouring islands. So anything you do here is going to capture market share from them, so there may be a little bit of competition, or it may share that market share out a little bit more. What we've seen is a population of 5,000 people doesn't generate sufficient footfall for small businesses to grow and develop and thrive. By increasing the tourist potential, the visitor economy, that increases footfall and it increases the amount of spending power on the island. That's the real emphasis here. The 2 words that we talk about in the visitor economy, volume and value. Getting more people in, that's great, but when they're here, they've got to spend money. If they don't spend money, there's no economic benefit. They're just passing through. The first thing, so the little chart on the right-hand side shows the interconnectivity between the different interactions. We won't go through all of them here. The chart's for illustration. It's in the plan. But the key first step here is to refresh the visitor strategy, to change the profile of Montserrat, to attract more people, to attract people for longer, to attract different niche groups. We heard today about sports tourism, educational tourism, the 6 festivals that you have, people interested in the volcano. That's on top of all the stuff that we've already identified, and I'm sure there's more as well. So it shows the strength of promise in that sector. We think enterprise is key. If the growth is going to come from the private sector, then more people need to be tuned into entrepreneurialism, and that starts at school level. It's not about teaching people about balance sheets, profit and loss accounts. It's teaching them how to run businesses, how to create jobs for themselves, how to create jobs for members of their family. Even if those jobs, small businesses are employing 2 or 3 people, that's quite significant. Remember, we only need 200, 300, 400 jobs to make a massive difference here. So we think this is quite critical. There will be opportunities that arise through this whole plan. But for people to realise those opportunities, they need some guidance, they need business support, they need to know how to market their businesses, they need to know how to handle tax and recruitment and employment law and stuff like that. That's what the business support package would do. We've also spoke to a lot of people about different sectors, and we call these sectors of growth. These are things which are happening, but which have more potential. We're talking about agriculture, we're talking about financial services, we're talking about the sand mining industry, we're talking about power generation, geothermal, a little bit more longer term maybe, but still significant. And we're talking about black swan opportunities. So what that is things that we don't know exist yet. The Europeans thought that swans were all white until they discovered Australia, and in Australia swans are all black. If you think about that, there's a lot of stuff out there that we don't know yet. We haven't identified it. So this whole plan and strategy is about making people more responsive to opportunities as they arise, not just individuals, but the government and the whole intervention sector for Montserrat. Infrastructure as well, of course, is critical. If people are going to come and invest money, they want to know that they can move around the island securely and safely, that the roads are sufficient, that all the sewers, electricity, broadband is up to scratch and competes with competitors and modern standards on other islands. We think there's scope here to refine what you've already got, to refine the land use policy and put more supporting mechanisms in place. This, of course, is all going to cost money. So what we've done is we've scoped out what we think is affordable with the government's existing budgets, the little bar in the blue, where we think private sector investment can come in, the bar in the yellow, but there's always scope for that to grow. And the bit in the middle is where we think third-party funders, DFID, Caribbean Development Bank, people like that, can get involved in projects, but that involves business cases. It involves positioning your projects in a competitive environment. But we think the plan, or we know the plan, will give you a better chance in that environment. So to summarise, we've engaged with a lot of people. We're engaging with you now. We're looking forward to receiving your ideas and your comments. We see this plan as an advocacy document. It has to be used by you. Raja has told you it's going to be a living document. It has to be used by the government and other people to go and lobby for funding to support these projects. The growth figures are significant. 200, 300, 400 jobs, doubling the economic output of the economy. That is substantive. But the way we've set it out, the way we've tested it with Raja and colleagues, we really think this is achievable. If we didn't think it was achievable, we wouldn't be standing here presenting it to you. But we want to get your buy-in. We're bought into it. We've written it. We want your buy-in. We want to help you understand it a little bit more. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. We'll open the floor to questions and answers now, Raja.
Montserrat going forward, we have much to do. We have a long way to go. And for the very first time this morning, I was able to listen on Radio Montserrat to this particular program that is happening as we speak. Having these consultants from Canada, I want to thank Mrs. Fiona Alexander-Smith for making it possible for those of us to listen to radio to hear much of what was happening on Montserrat, because I did not know that you had consultants on Montserrat dealing with the economy going forward. And then listening tonight, I heard that you've been here for 6 months, but I stand corrected. You've been here for 6 months. All right. You've been working on it for 6 months, but not in Montserrat for 6 months. Okay. Let me say that it is great that you're able to come and share this information with us. I've heard a lot of very practical words tonight, like practical, realistic, visionary, Montserratian, tailored for its people, people working together, and all the rest of it. And this is really, really great. I just wonder whether if we were to approach this whole exercise from the ground up, from the bottom up rather from the top down, who were the people that you interacted with on the ground? Were they farmers? Were they fishers? Were they small business operators? Were they art and craft artisans? You know, I just want to get an idea of who you really spoke with, because after all, the majority of us who live and work on Montserrat come out of these areas, you know? And while plans are made for the macro situation based on the way forward, we want to know what is happening short term. We want to know what is likely medium term, and what is the position long term. It is good to see that we have let me say, expert economist with us tonight. I was hoping that I would have heard from some local economists in terms of this whole exercise to give us a better perspective in terms of Montserrat, where we are, what you're working with, what we've been given, and who puts what into the process. You have to forgive my ignorance on all of this, because I'm a freelance broadcaster and journalist, and going forward, I would want to be able to interact with the public on a one-on-one basis based on the document that you will be provided. I'm hoping I get a chance to read it at some point in detail, and that I'll have people come to the studio who are able to make an input, as well as those who are listening to make a greater input in terms of where we are and what is happening on our behalf. Because going forward, we know we have to rely on ourselves. I come from the most rural part of Montserrat, and the area where I come from, we didn't have to depend on politicians and all that, because we know that we had to do the work ourselves, and we did it. And that is the background from which I come, so you have to pardon some of the things that I say here. So just to ask you to share with us on an ordinary basis, you know, as I said, it's not an academic exercise where I'm concerned, all right? I'm talking in terms of the people process, and what are we to understand from what is really happening, and how you've done what you've done, and who you have involved in the process to bring us to where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So your question had several parts. I won't go over to everyone. I'll let Consultant speak. Now, obviously, you know, in a sense that you cannot talk to every individual regardless of how the size matters. So you always have to go with the sample of the country. But regardless of where we are in socioeconomic status, the economic growth alone affects everybody. So if the stock market goes down, doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or someone who's making $10,000, you're going to be impacted. Obviously, the variations will vary. We have tried to speak with as many people as we can. Tonight's exercise is also an example of that. In terms of reading of the document, as I mentioned earlier, that even if it's approved, it will be a living document. It will be flexible enough to respond to the new challenges of the global economy, which are happening very fast. And I always say that even though we are island, we are not actually an island. When European Central Bank changes the interest rates, we might not realize, but it has an impact on Montserrat. We may not realize that. But this document also be strict enough to follow the plan which this one has laid it out. Of course, there are sectors, and you know there are more details available when we put it on the website. But it's a continuous dialogue. It is, and it's not an academic exercise. And trust me, I understand. And this was one of the things we wanted to avoid, that this not become an academic exercise. That's why the difference between this document and any other I have worked on is that this will be a living document. It will be continuous. So it's not going to be one of the papers you write for the professors and you get the grade and you move on. This is not going to work in that way. So it will be an opportunity for all of us to see what this document said to achieve those deliverables. We're going to be going on the radio, talking to people how we are doing, so people can have a live-in feedback as we move forward, taking this plan.
There was a number of questions in your commentary. I think it's just fair to say that we could speak to everybody on Montserrat, but is that the best use of resources? So we've worked with what we could do. We had a plan, and we've done that with the budget and time frame that we were working to. Can't really say more than that. We're from the UK, though, not Canada.
What I want to know is the hypocrisy that is coming from the British government and DFID, and even scientists for the volcanic problem. What is being done about that? They're being lying to the people. We have it. Hard evidence on that. The Premier knows it too. What's being done about these things? Because like on the optic fiber and the geothermal power, those things are what the government need to fuel the economy. And the same British that is saying that the reason for putting money in the geothermal project is to make Montserrat financially self-sufficient, and is to underpin the other major projects to come. But yet, DFID attempt to give 65% of the net profit from the geothermal power to private investors. And there's a consultant company that told DFID it's not appropriate. In that case, is the government should be the private investor. So, is no way that a private investor could have shares in Montserrat geothermal power and the optic fiber and our 10 million telephone numbers and the number one economic driver, which is those three put together, could be cheaper. Any time that private investors get involved in it, it's going to be higher. So what is the case? Nobody is tackling the lies that the British and DFID been telling the people. But Mr. Romeo, you should know that too. No, because one time I saw, at least you have a copy of that document, where they took out paragraph 8, 9, and 10 from that document, Unlocking the Geothermal Energy Potential of Montserrat. They took those three paragraphs out because they didn't want you to see what they had in paragraph 9, because in paragraph 9, they showed that private investors would install and operate the generating part of the geothermal system. And that is true, because you got a copy of that. But yet, the copy that they probably been using, having paragraph 8, 9, and 10, and your copy at the time when you were in opposition, it was called Commercial in Confidence. And their document didn't have that part. This is just a set of hypocrisy. And then, until somebody tackle those problems, we ain't going no place. We're not going any place. So that's my case.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Howes, better known as Captain John. Mr. Ponnen, I have been trying to promote geothermal development on Montserrat for many years. And to go further back in history of geothermal and Montserrat, my father in the 50s used to be in charge of monitoring the volcano. And my mother was one of the first announcers and was one of the founding members of Radio Montserrat. And she had a program on Sunday afternoons at the Grove. And while we would go and wait for her, my father said to us, right just outside of the radio station, that there is hot water under the ground here. But in those days, stainless steel was almost like gold in expense. And he said, you can't use an iron pipe to put a well there, to harness the hot water, to make geothermal power. And I was only 6, 7, 8 years old at the time, and I didn't fathom that. And he was saying you need to use special pipe to take the hot water. And I felt the ground, and I said, well, the ground doesn't feel hot. He said, yes, it's just down about 30 or 35 feet. Now, that fact was actually proven in the 60s when the Canadian company came to drill wells to search for water on Montserrat. And they dug a well just on the southern boundary of Grove, and they went down 30 feet, and they hit hot water. They drilled another well going on the bridge, just above the bridge, going from Sturge Park up to Richmond Hill, and luckily for the wellmen that had dug the well, it was just around midday, and they just started to drill, and they stepped back from the drill rig to go and have something to eat because it was, nothing else to do. The drill is doing its own work. And then there was a kabui and steaming hot water shot up from the just approximately 10 or 12 feet down. Now, luckily they're experiencing that, and they had to cap the well. And what I'm saying all this to say is that we didn't have to drill thousands of feet to get 1.5 megawatts in well 1 and 2, and drill twice that depth on well 3, and still have nothing to show for it, and spend many millions of dollars. Now, geothermal can be done so simply that in Israel, what happened is that in 1993-94, my brother met an engineer from Israel that worked for Ontario Hydro in Canada, and he was willing to come down to Montserrat to show he was experienced in geothermal power, because that is what he started out his life doing in Israel. And he was willing to come down to Montserrat for free. All the government of Montserrat would have to do, provide him, was room and board. And what happened is that the chief minister back then took the information that my brother sent down and threw it in the garbage. And that is how far back we have been dealing with geothermal power. Now, I have been, and Mr. Pond, who previously spoke to me, have been advocating using binary power. That way you use the hot water, you just need 89 degrees Celsius water to produce electricity, and then it's put back into the ground. Now, when an entrepreneuring Montserratian said, I will take that hot water and make a mineral spa. Now, I even approached the Rotary Club to get them to clean out hot water pond. This is just for a tourist attraction and for the people of Montserrat, because it has superheated hot water there at hot water pond. And to no avail, no one picked up on the idea. But it's a further tourist attraction for Montserrat. Now, I lived in Canada for many years, and I came down in just approximately a year or two before the volcano came to life. I came down with a boat. And I noticed that there was a well or a pipe, capped pipe, just outside the northern gate that's facing Richmond Hill. And I asked the guy at the gate, what is that pipe? And he said, oh, the United Nations sent a group here to drill, to check for the availability of geothermal power on Montserrat. And I went online and found that it said Montserrat has the capability of over 15 to 25 megawatts of power right there at Sturge Park. And the information is at Mull right now. It was given to the then manager, Hausen, and that seems to have been shoved to one side. And they went and they drilled these wells to only harness 1.5 megawatts, when in front of Sturge Park, it is just approximately less than 8 feet down to get the necessary hot water to harness between 15 and 25 megawatt of power. And so all I'm saying is that I understand DFID. I noticed from the onset that DFID took over the drilling of the wells and now said that they can't finish the well, we have to get private people to finish the well, etc. And what is ironic is that it seems to be like a chess game. They give you a little bit and then they take it back. They give you a little bit and take it back. Well, if the British government doesn't want to fund us, The Canadian government is a British-based country. They can, if approached properly and spoken to properly, can loan us or give us the money, grant us the money to finish the geothermal and put geothermal on Montserrat. Because if we get geothermal on Montserrat, we can not only not have to worry about propane gas for our cooking, but get industry started. In India, they make cars and sell for less than $5,000 US. We can use my brother had the ash from the volcano tested, and it's 87% silica. That can be, with cheap electricity, subheated and melted down to make silicon chips for the watches and transistors, etc. There is endless amount. We can smelter all the old iron, the old cars on the island. We can melt all the beer bottles and liquor bottles to make glass blocks to sell glass, because glass is expensive. And I see that I must be talking too much. He's standing up and Raj is standing up. So I said enough.
No, it's fine. It's valid points.
It's really interesting stuff. I'm just concerned to let everyone else have a say. So, and it's really good stuff.
So, I did just want to respond to one or two of the last points around geothermal. First and foremost, your Premier left us in absolutely no doubt in our meeting with him and his ministers this afternoon that this plan had to be an advocacy document, that we could build a case around investment for Montserrat. And that's exactly what the plan can be. It builds credibility and hopefully can be used in those negotiations for future opportunity. So I absolutely have no doubt about what's been said by you and others, Captain John, in terms of the potential for geothermal on this island. It's almost a no-brainer, as you've clearly indicated. I don't know the details of the cost-benefit analysis that's gone on, but clearly that's one of the issues that needs to be challenged going forward into the future. What I would like us to do, as Stephen has already mentioned, is to recognise that the plan that we've set out this evening, and will be distributed by Raja and his colleagues in detail, clearly suggests that there is no single answer. So geothermal is not the silver bullet that will fix the economic challenges of Montserrat. There are lots of other things that need to build around that so people and businesses can work around the opportunities that geothermal may or may not unlock in the future. The plan we have here addresses where the government can invest to deliver the conditions for economic growth, so that the businesses and the people of Montserrat, now and in the future, can take action, starting now, to start to build a more profitable, equitable, inclusive, prosperous island for everybody. It's going to be hard work. I really, really would challenge you to say that there is no one single solution. Even with geothermal, cost-benefit analysis would suggest that's going to be very expensive, and there will need to be actions to involve everybody, young and old, to develop the economy of Montserrat, and that's what our plan sets out as a very practical document.
Good night. Just two quick points from me, or questions from me. Like, how did the ordinary man run ideas past the consultants or the ministry? And there was mention of investors. Now, in the past, we've had problems with investors not investing because of they invest by getting citizenship. So is that something that you'll actually be looking at, like ways of how to mitigate that from happening, because that's happened a lot in the past?
So a couple of things I like to clarify. As I mentioned earlier, the idea here was to give you a brief overview of what this document is all about, so you can have an idea where this is going to be going. And in terms of looking at, as I said, the live engagement, we're going to be continuously talking to people as we go along. This is not going to be the end of tonight. I'm going to put out and I always say this to people, I always meet, and Premier always says it, I'm always giving away my WhatsApp number. I'm always available people to come and run their ideas. Because keep coming back to the point that this belongs to every Montserratian wherever they are. If you have any questions, any comments as we move forward after tonight, I'll available myself after the consultants are gone. This document will be responsible to lead it forward, to make sure that you have continuous engagement, continuous ideas as we move along in this document. Your second question about passport investment, I guess with this British territory, we are unable to sell the passports. Now, the question of investment is very important, and I'm going to say a few words on that. $1 trillion circulates the globe every day. Doesn't touch down. Now, how do you attract investment? This is one of the things I had talked about in one of the first interviews, that what it really means. In order to attract that, you have to have a proper infrastructure in place. So let me give you an example. If we lead a delegation to Canada, United Kingdom, or anywhere in the world to attract maybe 2 or 3 small hedge funds ranging between $6 to $8 billion, they say, okay, we'd like to come down because Montserrat is very safe. It's a good place to raise a family. It's a fantastic environment. Their first question will be, what is your speed of your broadband? Right? So it links to, you know where it's going. It's going to fiber optics. We lead a delegation to some other parts of the world, attracting wealthy retirees who are fed up with whatever reason, because you may not realize this. I have lived in almost every continent. Let me tell you something. This is a very, very safe place. I have seen one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. We don't know what we have it here. This is a very big selling point. So they want to come in here. What will they say? I'm talking about the wealthy retirees. Do you have a hospital where I can go for it? So you see where this is going. So in order, people throw around these terms, attracting investment, all this, without having a proper context. How does it work? So those are the key infrastructures put in place before we sort of started to, and in terms of the passport, a lot of Caribbean countries are in trouble right now. Dominica, St. Kitts. Just 2 months ago, they caught this Iranian terrorist in Australia carrying Dominican diplomatic passport. I don't know if that is the right approach. It works for certain countries, including Canada. It works well, but Canada has spent $3.6 billion on security. So we have to be sort of cognizant of the fact that what kind of things niche we are attracting. Same thing with the tourism. Obviously, we cannot have 3,000 people showing up at the door. We just can't handle it. So how about targeting a very niche market, 200 to 300 very wealthy people who can come here and really enjoy the beauty of this country. And it is extraordinary. Some of you have seen me. I have this bad habit of smoking, right? So I always get the lessons from local master. Raj, you got to quit. You got to quit. And I enjoy the view. I look at over the outside and I said, this is fantastic. So we have to market the country out there to really attract those dollars which are circulating, which are really dying to come. So this plan does it. It may not be visible in the presentation, but it does it. It stays out the press.
I think Raj is right. And, a lot of work has gone into the plan, 6 months. We can't go through it page by page here. We're trying our best to get key messages over and invite discussion with you. So, we're happy to take more questions and try and explain it in more detail to you. We want this to work for everybody. So, any more questions?
Hi, my name is Easton Farrell. I listened to Rose a little early on, and when I heard you saying that the plan is a bottom-up plan, I kind of my head, because I read online that there was an advertisement going out for a tender document for consultancy for the strategic growth plan. And to be honest, that's about all I know about it up on this point. That's about all until this morning. So it means then that the question, beg to ask the question, exactly who the consultants spoke to. That's not a matter. I think they can. Because I would presume that some of us would have been involved in the consultation in terms of contributing to a plan that would affect us. But that seemed not to be the case. I'm not saying you didn't talk to people. The question is, who? I know you're a consultant, and I expect you to produce a plan that's acceptable to the people who pay you. I accept that. And so the plan sounds good. The question I beg to ask myself, what am I hearing now that is different to what I heard 5 years ago? Yes, the roadmap. Yes, you're identifying projects and linkages for the economy. Yes, you're talking about the growth strategy for Montserrat. Yes, you're talking about the tourism sector. You're talking about infrastructure. You're talking about these things. The question is, what commitment does the government of Montserrat have at this time from anybody to finance these things in the short to medium term? That is critical, because at this point in time, we just can't continue talking about paper. And you're saying, Raj, that it's a live document. I agree with you, because we have to tweak it accordingly. But the question is, what is the short-term plan to kickstart what we're trying to kickstart? And I don't know that, well, I guess it won't come out. But I'm hoping that in the not distant future, we will start seeing some flesh being built on this skeleton, so that the people of Montserrat can say, really, this is what is happening. Because to be honest, I don't want us to be going around in circles, because I think I've been here already 5 years ago. And I think we were there, but I'm not sure where we are right now.
Well, first of all, I just want to clarify. The members of the House, some of them were really consulted. We reached out to you, sir. I hate to say it, your mailbox was full. We reached out to your telephone. We couldn't. But I mean, as I mentioned, just to clarify a few things, we did. No, but that's okay. It's not. But as I said, if you're concerned about engagement, well, I wasn't here 5 years ago. I mean, so I can't really speak about. One of the lessons my father taught me is that you should always learn from the past, but the past should not dictate the future. I mean, it's always important to remember, but it should not dictate the future. So I can't really speak with authority what happened 5 years ago. I can only speak with authority about this document. Now, putting a skeleton, you're absolutely right, sir. And this is why, that we have to make a case that why these things are necessary to move on. If the British government has said that as Premier said in his remarks, nobody likes welfare, sir. Nobody does. People don't wake up in the morning and says, I'm going to beg. Nobody does that. So what you have to do is that when you provide certain concretes, and again, I don't want to go in the past. When you provide certain concretes, you make your case to say why these things are necessary to consider that. I think you can make enough noise. Now think about this for a moment. As Premier said it earlier, we went through 2 Category 5 storms. Why suddenly the United Nations, which has been leading on the global climate change, suddenly invited only the Caribbean nations, sir? It's because this is the only region in the world which has faced the more climate disasters than anybody, not even Fiji. Because the rationale is out there right now. So the economic resiliency comes with that idea. So you start raising the critical mass at the global level, right? So that's how you start doing that. Now, nobody knows the future. Nobody has a crystal ball. People don't fail to plan. They plan to fail. Now, again, as I said, as the lady earlier said about the academic exercise, this is not an academic exercise. You're dealing with people's life. Economic growth, it's a concept we toss around all the time without people knowing what it actually means. So in coming back to that it was said 5 years ago, perhaps it was said, as I said, I wasn't there, but we are going to be pushing for this to say that we need this critical thinking with cost attached. This is how you want it. And as I understand, you take people at the face value. So when the British government says, we want Montserrat out, Montserrat, I'll say we want out of dependency, but for that you need certain things in order to get it out of the way. So if people, just to give you a small example before I go on another question, when When you're 13 and 14-year-old, I do with my boys, they said they want to be rich. I said, for that, you have to go to school. You're not getting unless you win the lottery. So you have to make an argument in that sense, that you have, if you want to do something, you have to give something else. And this is what it does. It's not a sky in the pie document. I just wanted to let this know. So go ahead.
My colleague Stephen's already said it's not possible for us to consult with everybody. This is a consultation event. There's the opportunity after this event to have one-on-one discussions. There's the opportunity for you to contact us by email, to have further discussions. We're quite happy to do that. We did have consultations with DFID, with the Caribbean Development Bank, about the second question there, which was about how this plan might get funded, might get invested, etc. In broad terms, I can say that DFID and CDB are happy with the plan draft that we've discussed with them, but they want to be assured that we've had conversations like this one, which might be difficult in places, that the people of Montserrat, in effect this evening, you and the other people we've spoken to, the people we reached out on the radio this morning to, that you've been consulted and involved in this plan. That starts to move into the hard yards, which are about Raja and his colleagues from the government taking a plan that has been recognised as good practice by DFID and CDB and asking them, okay, which parts of this plan are you going to invest in? I have to say also that it's for the people of Montserrat, for businesses in Montserrat, for you as individuals to invest in this plan as well by supporting it. I think your other point was it was a great one. I've seen loads of plans before. A plan from 5 years ago might have looked similar to this one. I've not seen that plan. I've seen plenty of the plans that were produced. But I think there isn't anything new under the sun. But what there is a point in time where people and circumstances, climate change, hurricanes, bad news, volcanoes, etc., come together to form the perfect storm. That means this plan can be delivered and can be taken forward. And it's that hope and aspiration, the enterprise culture, which is central to our plan, that we would like to take from this evening and like to take to the launch of the plan going forward.
This plan that he keeps talking about, I think is about 6 months too late, because he's consulted with the Montserrat government, the central bank, DFID. How many people have been consulted about or preparing this plan in this room? None of you. How many people in this room, because we keep talking about this plan and what we're going to do with this plan.
So I have to say, you're being consulted this evening. That's the whole point of the meeting.
But you keep referring to this plan. You know what this plan is. We haven't seen it. We've just seen it up on there. I'm sorry, but, I've been here for 30 years. I've invested a lot of money. I love Montserrat. I am, as far as I'm concerned, I am a Montserratian. And we've seen all the disasters, from Hugo to the volcano. And we've lost a lot of people who left because of the volcano. I think the whole point of this is to kickstart the economy of this island. Not in 3 months' time. It has to have a plan. If we get all these dreams come true, how are people going to get on and off the island? We've got an airport that should have never been built there. We've been asking for a breakwater. We've got a piece of concrete out there that's not even on bedrock. It's floating around. I used to dive underneath it and inspect it. We've been asking DFID, and all we get is their interpretation of how this government has to work. Is that true, Captain Johnny? Because you've seen it. I've seen it with DFID. I've seen how DFID has wasted 20-odd million pounds. We have geothermal. I was on the Energy Committee. We did the geological survey, and we got the drill team in to do it, and then we were sideswiped. But Well 1 and Well 2 has got 3.1 megawatt of power in it, and it's been there for 3.5 years. What's wrong with the government? What's wrong with the people of Montserrat? We've a power station that's been more on or off than whatever, and is not adequate for what this island needs. So this wonderful dream, I hope it comes true. Geothermal is the key to get investors. I was in industry all my life and retired here. You need cheap power. You will have industries queuing up to come to this beautiful island because it is the safest place in the world. Everybody, you've got it as a disadvantage. You've got this piece of paper. We don't know what's in that piece of paper, and eventually we may get a copy. So you've talked to the wrong people, I'm sorry.
So you're right. We have got the document, and it can't be released until the government sign it off. That's the right and proper way to go about things. So just a couple of things before Roger steps in. Geothermal is in the document. No one's saying it shouldn't be in there. And there's a lot of criticism.
Government, it would be owned by everyone surrounding. They would all be given shares in it. We can't get a response from the government because DFID pulls the strings.
So I'm from the UK. I'm not going to stand here and defend DFID or the UK government, but I sense where you're coming from. The plan is there. We've explained what the plan is about. I don't know what else we can say at this point.
Thank you so much. I understand what you're saying. So, a couple of things. The idea of today's meeting was to get your thoughts and your views that what could be done in your mindset as you have experienced, or as you explained what you did in your past life, to get your input. And for that, you have to provide your experience, so it could go into document to see, not to be biased. So, for example, if you read a verdict before the judge reads it out, they never do that in law. No jury ever sees that because it wants to be biased. They don't want to do that. So when you have a criminal law happening, they sometimes move the venue so people are not biased. They want to give them an open slate. We wanted to hear from all of you that when you go out, when you're buying a grocery store, when you're buying something, you must be thinking about the future of this country as you eloquently put it. So if the idea is that what are your thoughts, the challenges and opportunities this country has? It's a very simple question, but not very easy answers, and that was the purpose of this gathering. This document, as I said, I keep coming back to the idea. I think because we have been burned before in that sense that, that yes, it's a dream, and I'm not going to defend that. We have to show now how we implement that. Hence my earlier point, sir, is that the continuous engagement will continue. It's not if you want, we will talk. I will come and see you where you live, sir. I will make myself available. Okay, that's perfect. I'll need some exercise. We'll do that. It's for everybody. That's the idea. It was not about to put up a document out of hat and shove it on people's face. No. It's the idea to ask every one of you, when you drive, when you go away to other countries, when you come back, you must have talked in your family over Christmas or Thanksgiving to say, what are the challenges of this country? That's the idea, in a very simplest term. So we can take that and put it in a document to see how we can move this forward. So those are my 2 cents, sir. But thank you for the question.
It's been interesting sitting down and listening to the plan as presented by McDonald here and Raj. I'm somewhat a bit disappointed, though, because I thought I would have come and hear a bit more. But I guess that the skeleton that you presented there is based on how far you have reached, or essentially what you want the public to know. However, let me start by saying that one of the things which I think that would have set the tone and the background very well in terms of the plan. And I like the way how you set out that we are small, only 5,000 people, whatever have you, and that inhibits growth. But also the economic environment in which we operate in is one of the contexts that I think should have been looked at. The fact that we are a small, open economy, we operate in a fixed exchange rate regime with a currency union, limits the sort of tools that we have that we can utilize to spur growth. Essentially, and I keep saying this time and time over again, and you would agree with me, being small, being open, being in a fixed exchange rate currency union, you have no monetary policy tools available to you to affect growth. No interest rates, no exchange rates to manipulate, nothing like that. Nothing. So you are reduced basically to utilizing fiscal policy as your way out. You cannot affect spending because you're under an aid arrangement. So your aid is essentially determining how much you spend. So the only option that you have really is revenues via tax concessions. That's basically it. Which is the reason why, if you look across the entire Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, every country in the region that operates under the same regime like us in Montserrat use tax concessions to influence investments and to influence growth. So I think that from that perspective, that you have to figure a way how you build that and factor that into your plan, because that is paramount. Excellent, yes. So I think that is the context in which I want to set my discussion, given the fact that we are limited in terms of the options that we have available to us. And to move forward, again, if you were to look at the projects that we are speaking about, and you have listed some of them there, that we have to begin to understand that we have been going along a wrong path in terms of how we want to go about rolling out the projects. Because I haven't seen a proper PSIP, which we call a public sector investment program, done in Montserrat since I've been back home, and I've been back home since 2012. I haven't seen a proper one done. And essentially, we have to determine which projects we're going to ask for aid for, and which projects we're going to do public-private participation or ask for foreign investments. We have to establish that. Clear, because you cannot go and ask for aid for everything. So you have to delineate clearly which projects you're going to ask for aid for, which projects you're going to ask for funding for investments for. Let's take a few examples. The hospital, for example, has no revenue streams coming in. If you tax the services, you're going to push healthcare costs up, so you have to ask for aid for that. That's clear. The port has the potential to generate revenues, so you can look at the public-private participation or possibly a foreign direct investments or a loan to fund it, because it has revenue streams. Discussion again about geothermal energy. And my friends, again, sorry, but I disagree with you. I think that given that the geothermal project has the potential to generate revenues, we have to look at some form of public sector private participation, foreign direct investment, or a loan to build it. It's just, that's the way how it is. Once there is a revenue stream that can be utilized, that's the way. And that's the reason why the British is saying to you, in respect of the project with the fiber optics, that you have to look for participation also. That's the reason why, because they have clearly set in their minds that there are certain things that they will do, certain things that they will not do, certain things that they think that you should do. And I think that it is when we sit down to look at the spectrum of projects, we need to look at that to see which one we bring to the table first, which one we bring after, and that kind of thing. Now, move on to look at the key sectors that we need. I think the plan, though, and I like the way how you did it, we have to look at the key sectors that we're going to single out to spur growth. 3, 4 sectors. I think agriculture is not going to do it. The arrangements we have in the region right now, CARICOM, CSME, OECS, you cannot ban, you cannot put up tax tariffs, and etc. So, being small, I don't see us being able to produce anything substantial that we can even say, well, we could probably target self-sufficiency, but we are still going to be open. Because you cannot limit Dominica, St. Vincent now that is coming in the market. You cannot, because they are part of the union, they're going to have to trade. We're under a free trade arrangement with them. And I cannot see us, unless that we use extensive technology, producing stuff cheaper than they can. So we're going to have to decide where we're going to go with agriculture. Is it that we're going to just do it for self-sufficiency? Do we target some goods that we're going to export? What are those? I think fishing is the most likely option, given our small population. Tourism. That's a very interesting one. Also, I see you put it up there, but you term it, the term you use for it. Visitor economy, yes, visitor economy. It's a new term. I've never heard that term used before in that context. But yes, I think that is an option that we have available in terms of cruise tourism, land-based stay over, visitor arrivals. The thing is that in the region, we have always seen that the stay-over tourism is where you get the monies from. And we have to find some way how we're going to get into that sector. Because what we have here, as far as room stocks is concerned, is nothing. Nothing. The biggest hotel we have here is 16 rooms. I don't think we even have 100 rooms put together. When I had the OECS conference here a couple years ago, I had a challenge finding rooms. There's a problem. And that is where the money is. That's where the foreign exchange is. You need the foreign exchange to grow. You need the foreign exchange to come in, to appreciate your money supply, and to generate transactions to grow. And if you don't have that, you have a problem. And so, in my view, if we're not going to explore small to medium-sized hotels, we have to critically look closely at the Condominium Act. We haven't explored it at all. But it has the potential to create a kind of lifestyle like we had before in the Richmond Hill, the Old Town area, where you can build condominiums and people can buy and own them and come and stay over for 3 months. And the beauty is that when they're gone, you could use them as hotel rooms too. So we have to look closely at where we're going in terms of this tourism sector, because it has the potential to generate foreign exchange. One of the sectors, though, which I didn't see touch here, and which I think that somehow, because of the blacklisting thing which happened back years ago, we have refused to touch, is international financial services. I don't know why, but we have refused to touch it. Listen, guys, we get roughly $70 million every year from the British in terms of aid, about that, roughly. Okay. We need to find a way how we're going to bridge that gap in the next 10 years. We cannot tax the people that we have here to bridge that gap. It's impossible. 200 or 300 jobs, as the plans call for, cannot cut it. We're not going to raise that tax, that tax from 200 or 300 jobs. The question is, where are we going to raise it from? And it has to be an arrangement, in my humble view, outside of the population. And the only sector that I can see where we can raise those monies from is international financial services. BVI, British territory, same like us, uses the British name as secure investments. We are British, so they're looking over us. There's this oversight body, and they promote it very well. they make lots of monies. Cayman Islands, same thing. Why aren't we doing something with our Britishness, so to speak? Why aren't we doing something about that? Yes, we like to curse them, defeat, whatever have you, but why we don't turn it around and use it to our advantage and see how much money is that we can attract? Because all we have to do, is simple, just equalize our laws with them. Whatever laws they have on the books, we equalize it with them and then give the customers them a choice. Choose between Montserrat, Anguilla, BVI, Cayman Islands. We did it in Antigua. We equalized our laws with them and give the customers a choice. That's all we have to do. And get out there in the major sectors where they are, the Panama, the Hong Kong, the Dubai, and we promote ourselves. And let the customers come and choice. If you get 3, 4, 5, 6,000 additional IBCs, it's a lot of revenues. And we can bridge that gap in less than 10 years. No, I'm not finished. You want to come in? Oh, okay, yes. Let me wrap up then by just touching quickly at the whole question of private sector development. Because I think that's important, and that was touched in your plan. Yes, we need to encourage private sector development, but we need to put in place structures and a system as to how we're going to do that. Now, private sector development is not going to come on its own. If you do it right now, you put up a next restaurant, the next supermarket, the next whatever have you. All it's doing is taking business from one to give to the other. That's all is happening. You have to link it to something which is bringing in the foreign exchange. So whatever that we're doing has to be probably linked to tourism or linked to something else, whereby there's business coming in and there's new monies then, not just a circulation of monies. And we have to put in place laws that are transparent, that will provide incentives to those private sector. It cannot be a cabinet decision that decides who gets what. It has to be a transparent law there. So you know that if you invest X amount, you get this off. If you create 6, 7, 8, 10 jobs, this is what you get off. Transparent type of arrangement whereby that's going to take place. And again, I'm glad the Premier is here. We need to find a way how we're going to utilize the financial sector. I have to put a plug in for the financial sector at the end. In terms of the funding available there, because there's excess liquidity there. But they're not going to take the risk. I'm telling you, we're not going to take the risk unless we are assured that the risk can be mitigated or covered. So you have stuff like the partial credit guarantee scheme that is done at the regional level. We need to figure out how we're going to do that. Do we bring back an arrangement like what transpired under the MDC with the business financing facility? Stuff like something that would, or do you offer as a government guarantees then to the banks, credit unions to lend to certain sectors? That, in my view, will give me the ability to say, yes, I could lend to what we call the high-risk sectors and put monies out there. That's what I have to say.
I liked what you said. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that kind of resonates with what's in the plan. So hopefully when you see it, you'll agree and recognise. Financial services is in there. It's linked to the optical fibres and stuff like that as well.
The plan is quite sounds like it's quite interesting, although we didn't, only just got a little framework of it. I think I heard you saying that you can't release it until government approves. But I think you could put it online as a draft, as it's clearly marked draft, and then most of us might not be able to read through the whole thing time-wise, but we can at least look in it and see what the content of each, like the sections that you had up there, we could probably get a better idea of what it's all about. rather than keeping it, and then when government's approved it, it's too late for anybody to make any comment. Somebody else made that suggestion as well, or that comment as well. Secondly, I heard Rose say early on that she never heard of anything about Mott MacDonald. I never heard, the first time I heard about Mott MacDonald, I think you all sponsored the steel band show, Night of Pan, last December. I saw notices up saying sponsored by Mott MacDonald, and I thought, oh, that's an unusual name. I wonder who they are. And then I never heard anything again until I think a couple of days ago when they were advertising this session here this evening. So probably another time, if you could have done it over, we should have heard more about it. Other speakers have said the same thing. We should have heard more about it publicly as you went along. We have these Mott MacDonald people. They're working on a plan. You know, just something like that, rather than all of a sudden we're hearing about Mott MacDonald and this plan, and we, you know, now we can come and hear about it. So that's just a tip for next time, maybe when you're going somewhere else. Just a minor comment is that right on your first slide, you have a cruise ship and some yachts. Nice idea. But I think the cruise ship is too big. We've been told all the time, and you had it in your plan, we can't manage an enormous cruise ship. We could manage the medium size or small, like the ones that we're having now, which is good that we're having them, even though Labour speaks mentioned that they don't spend much money on the island, but at least they're coming, and, you know, the people will go back and say, come to Montserrat, spread the news and stuff like that. So I think the cruise ships are still good, but the one you have on your picture is a much too bigger cruise ship. That's the one that has thousands of people on it. And last of all, I think, well, just judging from the outline, as you didn't have much time really to go into details, as you've mentioned, but some of the ideas seem to be similar to what's been tried before, like, is a nice idea, train school children to have, set up a little business. It's nice, but it's not sort of going to make an enormous difference to the economy. It's a good idea to have small businesses, but it's been done before. And even the private investors, the previous government went to Bahrain when we had the Montserrat Development Corporation in those days. They went to Bahrain and China, I think, but or either Dubai and China, I think it was, whichever. And I don't think that they got any, which was quite an expensive trip, and they didn't actually get any investors. So, you know, it's one thing to say, yes, the private sector must be involved, but it's probably easier said than done. So that's about it.
We don't have a financial sector policy. This may surprise you. And this will be, as you guys are talking, the Premier is increasing my workload, which is fine with me, to develop that. Private sector development, it's absolutely crucial to have a partnership with the private sector. But again, we don't have a private sector strategy. We're going to work on that because it's important. No country in the world grows if the 60% is employed by the government. It's just a proven economic fact. It was just not going to grow. Peter talked about confidence. Absolutely right. Without confidence, no economy can grow. And I always give this example. It's important to understand that. The world's most indebted country is Japan, but people still trust the Japanese economy. Reason? Because there's a confidence. The world's most second indebted economy is Greece. European Central Bank has invested $165 billion, but there's nothing to show for. Why? There's no confidence. Coming back to that, as I said, here comes the Peter walks in. Peter, I was just answering your question, man. You just missed it. It's okay, we'll talk after. He talked about we don't have a lot of tools. Peter is absolutely right. We don't have a monetary policy control. But as an economist, he would know that even if you have a control on monetary policy, you can still solve our problem. Europe is in front of us. You can lower the interest rates up to zero, and there's nothing to show for. So we can take comfort in terms of what we have and what we don't have. The idea comes back to this, is that what people think about when they go out, what are their ideas, what do they think about the economic growth, and what should be done about that. Coming back to the financial sector, Peter, answer your question, you were outside. It's important, yes. You're not going to tax the way people out of there, no matter where you raise it. I mean, it's just like, but how do you go about doing that? You saw that just yesterday, European Union blacklisted 37 countries. Dubai, Bahrain, and Panama is one of them. So confidence, as you said earlier, it's key. And I'm sure when you consulted with them, when you were talking to them, I don't want to know what you told them, because as I said earlier, no, I know you're laughing, that's good, man. Because I didn't want to be part of the consultation. I didn't want anybody to know what they were telling them. But I'm sure you touched upon those issues. This financial sector is important. And yes, yeah, Peter was consulted, yes. Peter was consulted. Not by me. Oh, you and I will talk, of course.
No, I don't think that. We exchanged emails, but we never really got into a discussion.
The idea is, so I can give you another example. I wasn't there when Bible was written, but I still believe in it, right? So there you go.
There's an old saying, after the Lord Mayor's show comes the dust cart. Now, one of the things I have to say is this. Is this document going to be in paper format or not? Or are you just going to publish it on the internet? No, the reason I ask is that reliable estimates on this island, anywhere between 50 and 60% of the population have access to the internet. The other 40% don't. So if you want to contact everybody, you have to have a paper copy. And I'm old-fashioned enough that if you have a paper copy, you can put your moniker on it, you can make comments about it, and then you can come back to you lot and tell you what we think of it. Now, I don't want to go into the operation of geothermal, because I've spent at least 12 years on this island dealing with geothermal. Some of what Captain John said I don't agree with. That's a different matter. But I agree that as far as geothermal is concerned, we have 2 wells. They have a resource of 3 megawatts proven, and it should have been in operation by now, and it could have been. Now, there was a company formed on this island who talked to this government when they came in and offered them a private-public partnership. They refused. They said, oh no, the British government's going to do it for us. We don't need you. Well, they've come to the end of that because the British government has said, no, we're not going to pay for it. It's a bit like the fibre optic. £5 million, very small amount. They won't pay. And one of the reasons why other people won't pay is because there's no profit in it. I mean, you can imagine that Flow and Digicel, they're not going to put in £2.5 million each to put in the fibre optic cable. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make economic sense. And so they won't be involved. They'll use it and they'll pay their dues, but they're not prepared to put the large sum in at this time. Now, apart from that, some of your other opportunities that you've put in your documents, I agree. I think we had a little show of hands at the very beginning. Who'd heard about this? And the answer was nobody in this room. Now, that shows if Mott MacDonald consultations have been on this island for 6 months. I listen to Radio ZJB very carefully most of the time. I listen to what they come out with. The first I heard about it was on Friday, I think it was, when it was announced that you were having this meeting here. That's not good enough. Why haven't these people been around talking to other people on this island? I've been here 17 years now, nearly 19 years actually, and I love the island. I want to remain here permanently as far as I'm concerned. I've retired, but I want the island to succeed. And some of what goes on here is not going to make the island succeed at all. You talk about farming. I agree that farming on this island should be one of the prime activities, even if it only feeds this population. But if you look at what farmers there are, a great many of the farmers are, to put it bluntly, elderly and female. The female bit is not a problem, but a lot of them are female, and they make no bones about it. They don't actually make any money out of the farming they do. Now, to get those people to do something else, you have got to get the younger generation to go into farming. And unfortunately, on this island, and I think it's probably the same in the Caribbean, that they don't like being out in the sun working on their plots. It's not what they do. It reminds them of bad times of slavery and all the rest of it. However, we did have a couple of Frenchmen here. They started a market garden system, hydroponics. They were producing lettuces cheaper than the locals. They had a market for their goods in Antigua. And what killed it? Extortionate and exorbitant cost of transport from here to Antigua. And they've stopped. A lot of the other things that were mentioned, which I can't remember, they're good ideas. And it should be encouraged, and we should be encouraged. Somebody said, town hall meetings. We should have more town hall meetings to tell the people what is going on and what is happening and what could happen. I'm not a financial expert. I know nothing about it. I was a salesman. I ran my own company, but I gave that up, obviously, when I left England. But we have this lack of communication. And somebody did mention it. 60% of the workforce work for the government. And that is a very, very bad thing. You cannot expect the island to recover with that. We do need more people here, but you can't expect them to come back when most of them have gone to England and are now either have good jobs in England or they're living comfortably on the social security, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they don't want to come back here. Anyway, where are they going to live? Where are they going to stay? What are they going to do? For those who are employable, what jobs are there? There's very few. And it's not going to change because the population of this island is like a small village. And you cannot, if you took this document to a village of 5,000 in the UK and said to them, oh, this is what we think you should be doing. You should be bringing in the investment bankers and you should be doing this and you should be doing that. They'd laugh in your face. It's not practical. And I don't think that we have a practical approach to what we're doing here. I'd be very interested to see this document when it comes out and to make constructive criticisms. And one of them would certainly be about geothermal, because I believe we've missed the opportunity. Nevis was on the radio and they had a television show saying that they had started drilling their new well that they're going down to 4,000 meters and that they would have this and that and the other. We were miles ahead of them and we should have used that. I agree entirely with one of the other speakers. We should have geothermal energy running and providing electricity. One of the big advantages, well, there are two major advantages. One is it produces no toxic effects, except arsenic and a few other things, but that's only in the effluent. However, apart from that, if we had geothermal power, the cost of electricity, even if you just took away the oil section, you would be able to cut the cost of electricity at least by a half. And that would be a big benefit to every single consumer of electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, sir, you're not old-fashioned. I love the paper version too, so don't worry about the age. Farming, yes, it's a difficult one, and it's not only unique to Montserrat. All across the world, farming is a sort of where young people are not entering. So this is something very a serious issue. Coming back to when you were saying earlier is that bring this document to a village of 5,000 people. I have to tell you, sir, there was a country exactly 65 years ago whose population was exactly 5,000. That country is called Singapore. And Lee Kuan Yew, See, you got that one, exactly. Thank you for thumbs up. It was a country called Singapore, sir. It has the world's largest per capita income. And when Lee Kuan Yew produced a document like this, British government laughed at him. So I'm just going to leave it like that.
I'm glad we had this session to help me to understand the level of engagement done prior to getting this document. When you look at the document, you realize, trust me, there's been some engagement and discussion and consultation done. And I think once you see more of the document, as everybody said, most have said, see something more concrete, you can make more concrete comments. So it's a live document. It's not going to be suddenly approved and acted on. It's being reviewed by cabinet, and the next steps will be declared to everyone. I have a few concerns which will be addressed as we progress, but I look forward to the time when you can see the document and make a better judgment, give further comment, and that we could move towards finalizing this document. I don't want to say too much at this point. I don't know if there are any more comments, but I'm really happy to have sat in my seat and listened to the comments made and the level of engagement that I assume needs to be taken going forward to finalize this document. Thank you.
Is it possible that this document can be overseen before it's signed by another meeting like this, just by some input as to what's in it before, because we're not going to have any input whatsoever. If the cabinet, that's what, 10 people, sign a document for the next 10 years' future of this country, is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace of democracies. It's quite scandalous. And I think you should do something about it. That this meeting should have been 2 or 3 months ago, the first meeting, then the second meeting. By that time, you've got some input from what you're saying. This is for the people of Montserrat. No, it's not. It's for 10 cabinet people who make the decision. I'm not decrying the cabinet. I had a business. All these people here who have businesses. Maybe some of the cabinet people have businesses besides a government job. We all know that. It's very, very unfair that you are allowing this to happen.
I just want you to go back to my opening speech, and I maintain what I said. It's going to be a monstration document. It is going to be reviewed until it's a monstration document. It's going to be finalized as a monstration document. My job here tonight was not to come and start a political debate and defend anything. I have listened, and I will tomorrow. We will have further discussions with cabinet, not to finalize anything tomorrow. That's not the objective tomorrow. And to take everything discussed here in mind. I just want you to know that. I was informed of various persons or those who were consulted in one way or the other, some in this room tonight who spoke. And so I'm going to get to the bottom of how much more needs to be done and get this finalized as a monstration document. Remember I said that in the beginning, and that's why I insisted on having this meeting tonight and taking this course. Thank you.